Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Chase. You know the show. This is The Daily Creative. This is where I do my very best to answer your questions on your journey of becoming a, advanced, maybe even a professional creator for a living, or you're already one and you got some problems. I'm here. It's like Loveline for creatives, and I take your calls. Let's get into the questions. We got two questions from Finn
This
today.
is Kalyan.
Finn,
I'm calling from India. I'm 27, and the question I have today is, I've been working with a photographer team, a wedding photographer team for the last 5 years.
Okay, solo photographer.
I've just quit that job as a full-time last year, and I started to become an independent photographer.
Okay.
Now, my dilemma right now is, do I go ahead as a solo entrepreneur, if that's the thing, or get a team and have more people helping me with the business? Because
Got it.
I have no business background in school at all, and I do not think I'm very confident about my business skills at all.
Got it.
And that's my dilemma I wanted to ask you about. And the second.
Okay. So the question is essentially, should I stay a solopreneur? He's a photographer, if I'm understanding you're a photographer, and should I build a team or stay solo? Well, first and foremost, you should do what your business can support. I think that's a really, really important lesson. I've seen people over-invest in gear, over-invest in staff, over-invest in just overhead, like they want to get a big studio, they want to do all this stuff way before they have any clients, way before they have the pressures to perform under, and deliver more volume, for example. So I also heard in there that you don't have skills managing people. That is an entire skill set unto itself. If you're worried about photography, management is then you're just doubling your worries. So this is a really straightforward answer. You need to have a business that's so successful that you need additional people in order to help you do the work. There's also something I believe, yes, I'd like you to outsource your weaknesses. I would like you to outsource weaknesses like accounting, for example. I think you should be able to balance a checkbook, but doing your taxes, for example, just paying somebody a couple $100, I don't know what it is in India, but in the US for a few $100 you can have someone else do your taxes. To me, that's a great use of time, but everything else you should try and understand first by doing what your strengths and weaknesses are, what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, just specifically around your craft and the billing enough to get paid to do what you're doing. And I think that's a great guideline for all of the other stuff. If you do that with respect to the business, and then you're thinking about, well, should I hire somebody? Why do you want to hire somebody? That's my question back to you. And if the answer, I'm going to make an assumption that you look on the internet and you see other people and they've got full teams, like there's 1, 2, 3, 4 people involved in making this video right now, and you see that on the internet, you think that that's required to do the job. I made videos like this, first of all with 0 people, then with 1 person, and then just over time we added people as we had A, the revenue to support it, and B, the volume that we were doing supported having enough people, which supported, or the revenue supported the people, supported the volume. So it's really important that you don't overextend yourself. To me, that's one of the #1 things that creatives do wrong, is they extend themselves too soon. You need to be so busy that you're like, I can't actually get all this stuff done without bringing somebody on to help. And realizing that when you do that, it's very difficult to then run the business and manage someone. And at first it's like, oh, I'm just going to have an assistant and I'm going to tell them what to do. Well, that's not really a career aspiration for them. That's a very short-term one. So if I'm going to be prescriptive, it's don't hire someone until you actually need it, and be under duress and pain for a while before you hire somebody, because that ensures that this is a sustained thing. It's not just a temporary blip. Can you use contractors? Can you use something else that's not building a team, but building a team of freelancers, not full-time work? To me, that's a great solution to get you through that hard hump where you're trying to figure out how much it costs. And you can do that with contractors on a really, basically, simple basis. You can test that for a while, and then the expectations are set on the other side of the table as well. Your contractors, they don't expect to be hired full-time. So I see, your question was about building a team, but I'm going to tweak that a little bit. I'm going to say there's checkbox, we answered that question around team, but I want you to think about that as the same thing with the overhead in general. Are you so busy? Have you rented studios enough, or gone to the local WeWorks, or all those different places that have places that you can rent? Have you done that enough such that it's so busy, and you did the math and you realized that, you know what, I'm actually spending more money having that temporary overhead as I would with something if I owned it or if I had a long-term lease. And you should do that with every part of your business. I see creatives that want to emulate with gear, with overhead, with studios, with a team, that they see what's happening on the internet with people who are wildly successful, and they think that that's how they got success. No, that's a product of success. So that's the way I think you should handle it, and I hope I answered your question. But it's a really popular question. I think I'm really glad you asked it, and I want you to know that you're not alone in this thing. This is a question that so many, I went through this process, and I know so many creatives. And the same is true with even a startup. Even if you get a bunch of venture-backed stuff and you've got all this money, if you just hire for the sake of hiring without actually understanding that there's a real need, you're going to get out over your skis, and it's going to cost you a lot in the long term. So keep it lean, keep it tight, keep it small, manageable, until you're busting at the seams, and then expand. Sweet. Thank you very much for the question. I appreciate it. Finn, let's get another question on the show here.
Hi, Chase. My name is Dominique Chanel. I'm at Travel de Chanel, aspiring photographer, a former professional cook for 10 years, and a travel junkie. My question is regarding paying off debt, like student loans. I've recently wanted to start focusing and investing more in my creative pursuits, but also wanted to pay down some debt. However, if I occupy my time with more work, it will leave me with less time to be creative.
Got it.
So my question is, as an aspiring entrepreneur, is it wise to deal with these types of obligations first, or keep leaving that free time for my creative ventures?
Got it.
Thanks again for everything.
All right. I love the question because there are millions of people that are in your shoes. Student debt, first of all, I'm going to riff on student debt. I hate student debt. It's the only kind of debt in our country that's not forgivable through bankruptcy, which pisses me off. The US government makes a ton of money on creating the false narrative that if you go to college, spend the money, that you're going to get a great job. So first, I just want you to be really wary. Clearly, you already have the debt, but for the folks who are listening that don't have debt, do you need to go to a four-year school? Do you need to spend $10, $20, $30, $40,000 a year to get a piece of paper that says you can do something like be a photographer? I don't think you do. I'm not ripping on college whole hog. I think for some, if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, you need a piece of paper. I think you should think about it. Obviously, that's required to move on to the next stage. If you don't, please, dear God, look at what it is to self-educate, and how can you avoid getting into a bunch of debt in the first place? Now, I understand your question is you already have the debt. So should you pay down debt or do creative stuff? Yes. Yes is the answer. It's not an or question. Should you pay down debt? Yes, you should. Should you do creative stuff? Yes. Why paying down debt would mean that you couldn't do creative stuff? That is an area of frustration. Now, if it has to do with the amount of time in the day, work longer hours. If it has to do with the amount of money that you think you need for creative projects, do creative projects that don't require a lot of money. Here's the prescriptive advice. I followed this advice. I figured it out along the way, and I'm going to give it to you here. I did whatever I could to minimize my student debt payment. I had a bunch of student debt coming out of a PhD program in philosophy, and it was big and ugly, and I hated it, and it pissed me off. I actually bailed before I got the PhD. But what I did was I worked with the government. I negotiated down in any way that I could to get that payment as low as possible. And I realized that pushes the payment out a lot. But I had a vision for myself that I was going to make money such that I could pay this off in one lump sum in the future. So I want to minimize the amount I'm paying. And there is some threshold here. I'm not saying just push it out indefinitely. But what can you do to minimize the payment to make it so that you can do it while you're doing the work that will allow you to have a bunch of time for your creative desires, for what I'll say, what you want to do with your life to make a living as a creator. And if you're waiting tables or parking cars, or how can you make that work fit into a small and as flexible time schedule as possible, 20, 30 hours, and then all the other time is reserved for creativity. When you're figuring out what your monthly costs are, you need to figure that student debt payment into there. That's one of the reasons I want it to be small but consistent. I want you paying it off, and if you can, through a bunch of negotiation and communication with the some studentdebt.gov, or I don't know what those things are. We're not putting graphics on here, so figure that out. You have to figure that out for yourself. But in summary, it's not an either or. It's an and. It's a yes. You have to pay down your student debt. Make it as small as possible. You have to keep making stuff, because otherwise you're delaying your life. You don't want to do that. Be responsible. You went to school. You incurred the debt. You need to pay it off. I also think you can come by, no problem. I think you understand the solution of doing both, and please tell it to yourself, tell it to your friends. It's not an or, it's both. You have to do, it's the and. It's and. Maybe we should call this like and. I don't know, or both. You have to do both. All right, Dominique, thanks a lot for the call. You are not the only person in the world who has student debt. Thank you for reaching out. This is I realize I'm prescriptive about this stuff. I actually dealt with it, and then I saved up enough money, and I got a big job, and I was able to just like, boom, later, dudes, that payment's done. And that's the way I prescribe it to you. All right? If you're watching the show and you want your question asked, if you can ask it, if you want me to answer it, I'm gonna give you a phone number right here. It's 1-800, actually it's not true. I don't know why I said that. I feel like Price is Right, not Price is Right.
1-800-LOVE.
Yeah. 1-802-962-4357. Just call me. I answer questions all the time. I'm filming like a whole bunch of these things. So stay tuned for another video, probably tomorrow.